It's true. I do speak with a lot of people when I'm traveling, also on my podcasts, also for my articles. So it adds up to hundreds a year, actually. So I get a good view of what's going on in the industry, but also what is going on in specific verticals. And I have to say something that runs as a thread across them, the ones that are doing it, the leaders, as opposed to the also rans, is I think it's the vision. That's going to sound very odd, but it's a bigger picture vision that goes beyond trying to do the same thing better. Trying to do the same thing better does make sense. That's your core capability. You want to do it better. But the leaders are looking beyond that. They're looking beyond what they do to where their business touches other businesses. What are the opportunities there for not just partnership, but thinking about the data, the activities at those fringes and bringing that into their business. So they're not looking at metrics any longer in isolation, for example, and they're not looking at behavior any longer in isolation, because that will only give you part of the picture. And part of the picture isn't the vision of the whole. So, for example, looking just at metrics, let's just take that, just looking at the data. And there's a great report recently also from Mixpanel that looks at the data, because they, of course, have data. I don't have internal data to draw from, but I look at all of the reports and I talk with all of the companies. And for example, the data points out right now, at this moment in time, e-commerce UA is booming. It's great. It's off the charts. Fantastic. So you would say, wow, we are acquiring new customers. Life is good. But then if you look at the mid-funnel metrics or retention, you're seeing it's actually very weak. So if you built your strategy on the full picture, you would say, it's looking great at the top, not in the middle, not lower, not at the bottom, not deep in the funnel. We need to do something. And that's the difference. It's understanding the full picture and thinking not vertically, doing the same thing better, but horizontally, what can we do better based on where our business touches other businesses, where it touches the consumer, what's going on, what are the behaviors, what is the data? And also, I would say as a last point, what are leaders doing? Well, they are understanding that yes, automation, AI, machine learning, it is here to stay, and it has changed marketing, and marketing must change, and they will change with it. Customer experience will change. Everything will change. But understanding where is the supervision, where is the quote unquote, human in the loop and at the right places, so that they're not actually being the bottleneck for their own progress. It's great to have a great big picture view, but not if you're going to be focused on all the details that you're actually standing in your way. Okay, so ad quality is exciting for me as a topic, and I've written about it. I'm building a community of publishers looking at this, concerned about it, because you could say, well, ad quality, what does that matter? Well, particularly in-app, and I'll stay with in-app, your product is the app. For the consumer, what you do in that app is your responsibility. So if you're getting bad ad quality because basically bad ads are being shown, and I'll get to the different types of bad ads just briefly in a moment, the point is they're not going to complain to the advertiser. They're going to say, why did you show me that in your app? So I think that's really important to keep in mind, that we are at a point where the experience is everything. I'm currently writing a playbook just about ad experience and how important that is to get that right. So if the experience is everything and ad quality is part of that experience, then that is what you need to be looking at and be paying attention to now more than ever, because we are in what Sensor Tower has called, I won't take credit for it, but I love what they call it, a monetization-first era, which means that you grow through how you monetize. Acquisition, UA, that used to be the motor of growth, but now it's not just getting customers and consumers, users, it's keeping them. Keeping them is important, and they will either complain or leave or tell everyone in social, but when they have a bad ad experience, you're going to find out about it and your revenue is going to take a hit. So that's why it matters as a business point. We can get into all the other reasons why it matters, because of my principles, for example, but that's what businesses are looking at. They're looking at how it impacts them. It does impact them. And the other thing to consider is that because it's a matter of principle, that means that regulators are very keen to look at this and they understand it's an ecosystem problem. It is an ecosystem problem, so you're not going to take the blame alone. There is a network, there is a supply and demand. There are those partners. But again, at the end of the day, I have seen several cases, and they're out there. You can look at them, where apps are banned because of the ads they show. So publishers are going to be held responsible. So what do? That's the problem. And that has always been there. It's just that now it matters more because your business matters more, right? If you're about monetization, you need to take control of your monetization. So we're looking at the interaction with the ad. What is going to show you that you have bad ads? Well, for one, you would have a solution to monitor bad ads. But some companies aren't that far along. And what they're doing is they're just saying, do we have a problem? And the sign that they have a problem is, for example, interacting with the ad. And you can see this in your dashboards. It's not rocket science. And people are exiting after or in the middle of that. And that's telling you that, that ad and that exit, that is a flag. That's something to watch for. Now let's talk about bad ads, what I'm calling bad ads. And I divide them between what I'll call content and code. Content is harmful stereotypes of women, ads that you don't want to have. For example, you have, an ad that's for children, then you're not showing ads about alcohol and cigarettes and things. You know what you need to show. You have your moral code. You can see it, and therefore that's one type of a bad ad. I'll get to in a moment why you can't see and monitor them all, because we're talking about millions of ads. You're not going to sit there and look at them all. Code issues are another thing. That's the malvertising. That's the spamming. That's if you have a fintech app, you really don't want to have someone, get this ad that says, hey, I see you have space on your phone. Let's clean it together. I mean, that's spyware. And if I'm getting a spyware ad in a fintech app, there is something very wrong, because that harms your trust. And that makes me wonder, are you even caring about the experience and the trust? I'm in a fintech app getting an ad that is spyware. So you need solutions that look at both. And if you say to yourself, well, I'm going to just block it. I saw this bad ad, I'll block it. I'll never show it again. I love what one marketer told me and said, well, that is like medicine after the funeral, because yes, you can block it for the future, but you just showed it now. So that user, those users that saw that ad, they're gone. You're not getting them back. Okay, you will get a different situation in the future, perhaps, but that is not the point. So you want to keep in mind that you need to have a solution in place. Now, some people need to also train teams for this if they want to do it in that way. There are solutions out there. I do know some companies, such for example, App Harbor has one. There are others. Or you need to think about how you're going to create your team. How is your team going to monitor this? Because if you say, well, we'll just do it with AI, that doesn't handle the code, for one thing. It'll handle maybe what the content is, and it needs to be scaling, and you want to have it relative to your business. So you need to have policies, not the AI. So the number one thing I'm also hearing from marketers and also telling them in my work is you need to be understanding the issue here, but more importantly, you need to have policies to enforce. What are you going to allow in your app, and when, and in which cadence? Maybe you'll tolerate, deceptive ads that maybe say, you can't close them. They're not skippable. You can never find the X. That's also a bad ad experience, but maybe you'll say, well, I'll allow that on occasion, but I don't want to have it all the time. In other words, you decide what you want to control, the cadence, the type of ads, then you need to enforce them. And many companies are not even at the point of creating an ad quality policy. But I think the main point here is to understand you need to address it, understand the ways you can address it, understand what happens if you don't address it. And there are reports that talk about this. I mean, there's the first ad quality index, again, from the company App Harbor, and I know the company because I'm looking at their work. I'm also, full disclosure, also interviewing companies in a special podcast series looking at ad quality because it's important. You know, what does it do? What are the metrics you need to watch? What is the impact? And in this case, they had the first ad quality index that looks at supply because you are a publisher, you are a company. You need to make informed decisions based on the in-market performance of your ad partners. So this helps you make decisions, you know, rank them, think about them. How do they handle user safety, user experience, monetization? How well do they perform? But how well are the ads also meeting your expectations of what a good ad experience needs to be? Because at the end of the day, the point is that we are in a monetization first time in the industry. That means monetization is how your business grows. So not by acquisition alone, you need to take control of your monetization. And the first step to that, the revenue lever here that you can take control of, is ad quality, addressing it, understanding it, having a policy for it, and not thinking it's somebody else's problem. So the question, which legacy KPI should we let go of? I mean, it is a fragmented world of data, but that's just the point. I think that in this case, more is better, but the blending matters. Otherwise, you're going to get a whole lot of data and you're not going to see what the data is really telling you. So I'm saying don't let go of it, blend it. And to my other point that I mentioned, you know, focus. If you're only focusing on part of the journey, if you're only focusing on part of the data, you're only getting part of the picture. So I like to think holistically. I know we've been talking about holistic for about 20 years, but now we can be holistic because we can see what happens in the product, in the marketing, in the behavior, what is going on before and after certain points that you've chosen as a good marketer, you've chosen as the events that matter. So it's about refining your pre-event indicators and being very clear about what you consider to be high intent. You know, it is a fragmented world of data, but speaking with a lot of companies where they're saying, you know, we're looking at things like not just repeat purchase, but, you know, how often do they add something to a wish list? Because that again is a sign of intent. So you're just deconstructing and reconstructing what you consider to be the signs of intent. The data is there. That's the good news. Most of it is there. I speak with other companies where it's when something is shared, that means there's a commitment to, you know, for example, in fitness apps, you know, I'm sharing this with my community. That means my commitment to actually do something worth sharing is there, i.e., I will be using this app or I will be using this service to achieve something I can share. So I think that the metrics are not so much the problem. It's redefining what you consider to be high intent. And you can see this. You will see this if you look at the funnel, although I don't really believe in funnels, but I'll call it a cycle, the life cycle. And you can see what happens and what leads to something else and start to look at the data that will shed light on that part. And then you're looking at pre-event indicators, pre-event indicators, and you're creating different journeys and looking at different signals that are going to actually inform that in your strategy, and you will not be guessing. There's no need to guess. You do have the data. I think it's more of opening up the aperture of how you view it and how you use it and make decisions based on it. So these are micro moments. So for one thing, you need to be able to capture them. And I think we're doing fine with that. But what we do about what we capture, I think that is the problem. And so what I'm hearing more from marketers, what I'm also telling them more is trade the rules for the flow. The rules-based world, that's not where we are. We come into services and apps and websites at multiple points. For me, even I would say the most key point is discoverability, but we'll get to that maybe in another interview or another time, because that's a totally different story. Where does the interaction start? Does it start at the point that we thought it was, which is someone comes into your funnel? There's a lot of steps before that as well. Discoverability is important, but I would say communications, for example, you thought there was a specific time of day to do it, a specific way to do it, a specific channel for it. That's a bit of the rules-based thinking that I think we need to be replacing. So the real way to win the moments, win the customer, win what it is that you're setting out to do. And keep in mind, winning needs to be sustainable. So it's not a one-off. I'm more in favor of profitable, sustainable growth than quick wins. Don't believe in them, because the data will change, behavior will change, everything changes. And because it's always changing, you need to be looking at the signals across product, across marketing, always with a lens of the customer behavior. And with AI, you can tend to optimize, which is great. You have to optimize, but not generalizing and not thinking that this segment holds. I mean, when I'm talking to marketers, what they're telling me is we're all set. The next, with our strategy, that is, what we're looking at is how are we going to optimize, how are we going to rethink, how are we going to match segmentation to the actual strategy and what we want to accomplish. But I want to just zoom out for a moment to something that I think is even more interesting. What do we do at the micro moments? What data, what signals are we looking at? I want to flip the script on that, because I think where AI is a tool and something we haven't harnessed yet is to think about, how do we understand if something works or doesn't? Because that's what this is about. Optimizing these moments, understanding behavior is saying, we did this, customer did this, therefore it worked or it did not. And then based on that, move on, optimize with AI, etc. Fine. Let's go back to the very beginning question. Something didn't work. The marketer, the company, usually uses that as a signal to say, well, didn't work, pause it. All the investment, all the effort that went into that is now paused, because we don't want a bad outcome. We don't want to say the campaign, the strategy doesn't work, not giving us what we want, therefore we'll do something else. What if you could use AI to look at that and say, well, let me look at that for a moment. Why pause it? Why don't we adjust it? Why don't we keep some of the resources and time and effort we put into the campaign and think about what would make it work? For example, maybe you're being too broad in your segmentation. Maybe you're not being specific enough in your segmentation. So you go for the high intent user, but that comes at a high cost. Why not go for the medium intent user? It's called the movable middle. And that is a concept in business for a reason, because they're in the middle and they can be moved. So if you're low, getting you to high is quite a project and quite an investment. And you don't know if people don't like your product or service, will you ever get them to be high intent? Maybe not. Who knows? If they're high intent already, it's like, having something 99%. If you get something 99.8%, does it really matter? Is it worth the effort to make people even more high intent? Probably not. So you look at the middle and you think about, well, maybe I will just dial down my campaign. I'll look at medium intent, where the win is much greater if I can move them up through segmentation. Or in this case, I know a company called Tier Ads that's building dashboards that can look at this and say, maybe it wasn't the right segment. Maybe it wasn't the right creative. They do a lot with rewarded ads. So then they're saying, well, maybe the reward wasn't exciting or matched the progression. So yes, we make a lot of effort to do campaigns, strategies based on the data we're capturing, the micro moments we're seeing, and AI optimizing. And that's all still very important. But I would love to see more companies flip the script, particularly in these challenging times, and say, let's use it not to optimize campaigns only, but to dissect what is needed to make this work. And that would be more exciting, and I think more business benefit than pushing pause every time something, some signal, some AI tells us it's not working. That's important. That's helping you save money. It's not working. Stop. But can't we revisit it? Can't we reignite it? And can't we see higher returns because of it? AI is here. It is here to stay. It is evolving at breakneck speed. We have no idea. I also suggest stay on top of it. Number of newsletters you can be reading. You can be reading, of course, Martechvibe. I will be writing about it, but make it part of your required reading. It impacts how you do your job. Some might even say it impacts if you have a job, but I won't go there because I believe in the positivity of being augmented, of being able to do different things differently and better. That, I think, is what we're talking about here. But I want to zoom out again because I love to look at different perspectives. That's part of my DNA. And I want to say, what about looking at what's really going to change in the formats? And what aren't we thinking about? What aren't we thinking about? And I love looking at the fundamentals because fundamentals for me are exciting. They don't need to be relearned. They don't need to be changed. I mean, even, for example, with apps, and I'm very focused on mobile and apps, but you're asking someone to go out somewhere, download it, add it to their phone, maybe register, all that good stuff that you have to do as activities where people can drop out of the funnel. But communication, messaging, we know that. We trust it. We're not worried about it. Even if you download the app, is it the right site? Oh, I'm getting something dodgy here. I don't know. No, messaging is what we know, what we trust, what is dead simple. And I'm excited about the opportunities there because of technology such as RCS, which we've been talking about for decades. It has arrived. It is available on iOS. What does that mean? That means that your inbox is suddenly a trigger to a journey, right? The inbox becomes rich, verified, trusted, conversational, discoverable, because the messages that you're getting are not just feeling like SMS. I know companies delivering newsletters on RCS, and what's really exciting about it is because it's always there. They're delivering a carousel of options, so it's a newsletter, coming into your inbox. You're seeing, well, you can buy this, 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 or this, and then they can change that later because it's always there to update it to the next offers. So you have this constant presence. I think there's something to be said for being always there, always on, always available. Marketing is all about being there, right time, right place, right context. Guess what? This is because I have it on my phone. I will choose it when I want to in the context that I need. I'm calling all the shots. So that's what happens in RCS. But what happens below that is that it changes behavior. So what's exciting beyond it being discoverable and conversational, because it is a message, right? And we're used to messaging, is what the journey will look like. Because normally you search, you're curious, you search. And then you look for options. You go to a landing page. Now you're going to land in a conversation. That's a very different starting point because through RCS, the conversation is triggered. So the brand isn't just sending a message. They're starting a relationship at the moment of intent. Oh, you landed on my page. You obviously have high intent. I'll send you RCS. message, and we can continue the conversation right there. That's the journey. That's the starting point, because the message, as I said, stays in the inbox. It's there when the customer wants it, when the customer needs it. It's colorful, it's rich, it's exciting, it's trusted, it's scalable. And that's why some people, for example, are talking about chatvertising. And I'll be writing about this actually for Martechvibe. Exciting. There's a reason for it to be a chief focus because it's advertising mixed with chat. It's another way to connect, and it's another way you can optimize the journey. So, yes, I'm excited about all the technologies and AI tools and tech that are going to help the journey as we know it, assist us in making a better journey as we know it across all of the forms and formats. But I'm also excited about what happens to the fundamentals of this journey when chatvertising, when messaging, when chat becomes a trigger not just for another message, but an ongoing, always present, always on, always interested, always listening conversation. I think that is going to be a game changer.